Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I've always known too much for my own good. That's just how it goes when you wear a badge at one of the most heavily guarded and secretive military installations in the world. Area 51. Groom Lake, call it whatever you like. For me, it was just sight. A place buried deep in the Nevada desert where silence was more valuable than gold, and curiosity could get you reassigned to janitorial duty or worse. My name is Mike Raines. 36, prior Air Force Security Forces, now a civilian contractor with EG&G. Been working perimeter and internal patrols at site for 6 years. Cleared for Tier 3 operations. That's not the high-level spook stuff, but it's enough to know what kind of experiments roll through the hangars and underground labs out here. Biological trials, aerospace prototypes, unmanned systems. Occasionally, things I didn't have a clearance code for but still had to walk past. You learn not to ask. You learn even more not to react. The day everything unraveled started like any other. Hot wind, a sky sharp enough to cut, and the never-ending hum of distant generators buried in concrete. I clocked in at 5:45 a.m. for the day shift. Me and Charlie Brooks, a former Marine with a face like he'd been carved out of gravel. We were posted inside the S4 sector near the Southeast Service Tunnel. It's mostly logistics and transport equipment over there. Forklifts, sealed containers, routine inventory. Boring stuff. But that morning, there was tension in the air. You feel it out here sometimes. The kind of stillness before something bad happens. The radio chatter was unusually quiet. No jokes, no background banter from the gate ops or hangar teams. Just sterile check-ins every 30 minutes like we were following a script. Then around 7:10 a.m., the first alert tone came through the base-wide comms net. Level 2 Biohazard Containment Alert. All personnel remain in current sectors. Await instruction. I looked at Charlie. He looked back. Neither of us spoke for a moment. "We got any labs in our section?" he finally asked. "No. Closest one is Bio A 2 down in the sublevel of Hangar 17B, I said, already reaching for my radio. That's on the other end of site. I keyed in our supervisor's channel. Kenneth Whitley, Site Security Chief, ex-FBI, cool-headed and precise. He picked up on the second ping. "Whitley here. Sir, this is Raines in S4. We got the alert. Confirming location of breach?" There was a pause. No confirmation yet. Ops has locked down the lower corridors. Just hold fast and stay off the main access routes until further notice. I'll keep you posted. "Copy that," Charlie muttered. "That doesn't sound routine." No, it doesn't. By 7:30, the base shifted from eerie to tense. You could feel it, like the entire underground structure was holding its breath. Alarms weren't going off, but the emergency ventilation shutters in the corridors had engaged, sealing off every intersection past the main hall. Then came the gunfire. Distant at first, echoing up from somewhere deep in the sublevels. The bursts were sharp. 5 or 6 rapid shots, then a pause. Then more, closer, too close. Our radios crackled alive again. "All units, sectors B through D, evacuate to upper hangar access point 3. Repeat, pull back to UHAP 3. Bio breach confirmed. Hostile casualties on site, this is not a drill." Charlie didn't hesitate. He grabbed his rifle, an HK 416 with short barrel, sight-issued, and loaded a fresh mag. I did the same. My sidearm was a Sig Sauer P 320, standard issue, and I had 2 mags on my vest plus a spare in my thigh pocket. We moved to the reinforced service hallway that overlooked the logistics corridor. From there, we had visibility toward the access lift that connected to lower-level labs. What we saw didn't make sense. A figure stumbled into the hallway below us. At first, I thought it was someone injured. He was limping, dragging one leg, clothes soaked with something dark. But then 2 more came into view. Same strange gait, and then one of them started to sprint. Fast, unnaturally fast, straight at the lift guards. The guards opened fire. One went down. The others didn't stop. Charlie cursed under his breath. That ain't hazmat. We were ordered to fall back, but S4 didn't have direct access to Upper Hangar 3 unless we crossed the corridor network, which was now flooded with people moving fast and chaotically. Some were soldiers in biogear, some were scientists, some were being chased, and a few weren't moving anymore, just twitching on the ground in pools of what I hoped was blood and not something worse. I saw Whitley once, dragging a young tech by the collar toward the armory vault. He caught my eye and shouted something, but the sound was buried beneath more automatic fire and the klaxon sirens now echoing throughout the ceiling vents. We fell back through S4 toward the emergency access shaft. It's not a main exit, but it connects to a reinforced stairwell that leads toward the north perimeter gate. We figured if command was compromised, we'd regroup there. We didn't make it far. On the second-level stairwell landing, we ran into Davis, a young guard from Bravo team. He was pale, shaking, covered in blood that didn't seem to be his. He had lost his helmet and was clutching an M4 like it was a lifeline. "They're everywhere," he said, panting. "They got Ramirez, tore him apart. I hit one with half a mag and it didn't even flinch, didn't even slow down." I pulled him aside. "Are you injured?" He shook his head. No bites, just blood." We took him with us. At the halfway mark to the access lock, we saw the first signs of the breach spreading. Emergency bulkheads sealed behind us. Lights flickered, and then came the screams. Not panicked ones, these were the guttural, broken-throated shrieks of something no longer human. One of them hit Davis from the side so fast I barely registered the blur. We fired in sync. Charlie emptied 5 rounds into its torso before I got a clean headshot. It dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. Davis was bleeding, deep tear across his chest. He looked at me, panicked. "Mike, I don't want to..." I didn't let him finish. We left him. I had to drag Charlie away. He didn't say a word, neither of us did. The next hour was a blur. Fire suppression systems failed. Lab 5 exploded, no confirmation on the cause. We saw one of the armored rovers, a Rhino MRAP, barreling down the hall unmanned, smashing through security glass like a sledgehammer through plywood. When we reached the northern sub-access platform, it was quiet. Too quiet. That's when we met Dr. Ezra Malik. He wasn't military. He was one of the lead virologists working in deep containment. He wore a torn lab coat over a level B hazmat suit, face exposed. His hands were red up to the wrists. "Your guards?" he asked, coughing hard. "You have to listen to me. This wasn't an accident." "What are you talking about?" I asked, aiming low but steady. He looked at me with wild, exhausted eyes. Project Shard, synthetic host agent replication design. We were testing regenerative compounds on cadaver tissue, trying to stimulate postmortem neural activity. It was supposed to be inert. The host, something mutated, became aggressive, transmissible. They sealed the lab, but it was too late. It's airborne in close quarters. Bloodborne, saliva, scratches, you name it. Charlie stared at him. "So, it's a virus?" "It's more than that. It hijacks the brainstem, overrides pain, fatigue. It turns people into, well, you've seen it." How do we stop it? He didn't answer right away. There's a prototype suppressant in cold storage, Vault C. But it's not a cure, it just slows neural deterioration, buys time. I asked the obvious question, how long? Maybe an hour, 2 if you're lucky. I nodded slowly. That's enough time to get a message out. Dr. Malik looked skeptical. You'll need a clean channel. EMP shielding is still active. Only place above ground with an open link is the satellite uplink in the East Ridge Tower. That meant going topside, through the infected zones, with no guarantee of survival. But we didn't have a choice. We were about to move when something thundered against the corridor wall behind us. Then again, louder. Cracks split across the security glass. Charlie raised his rifle. We need to go, now. Malik grabbed his satchel. If we don't stop this, it won't stay here. You understand that, right? I did. And as the glass shattered and the first figure tumbled through, skin pale, mouth wide, eyes black with rot, I knew the first 12 hours were only just beginning. The thing hit the floor hard but recovered with an animalistic speed that turned my stomach. It scrambled up, limbs jerking unnaturally, and came at us with a screech that rattled the walls. Charlie didn't hesitate. His rifle cracked off 3 sharp bursts, center mass, but it barely reacted. I stepped forward, aimed high, and dropped it with a clean shot just above the nose. The thing collapsed mid-sprint, skidding to a halt a few feet from Malik. Behind the broken glass, more figures pressed forward. Shadows, dozens of them, moving in that twitchy, jerking pattern that made them seem less like people and more like puppets operated by broken strings. Their hands slammed against the edges of the steel bulkhead, bloodied fingers clawing for purchase. One slammed its head repeatedly into a beam until the skin split open and the bone beneath was visible. And still, it kept coming. We ran. Malik led the way, shouting instructions over his shoulder as we barreled down the emergency corridor, the echoes of those shrieks chasing us like a tidal wave of chaos. The corridor twisted through one of the subcomplexes, an older part of the facility rarely used by anyone outside of engineering or research support. It had been partially sealed off since before my time, with faded hazard tape and decommissioned utility consoles lining the walls. We cut through a service junction marked C3 Maintenance, bypassing a security door that had been disabled and dropped into a narrow tunnel network that led deeper underground. The air changed almost immediately, denser, heavier, with a stale metallic tang that clung to the back of my throat. The emergency lights flickered and buzzed overhead, bathing the tunnel in sickly red pulses. I kept my rifle at the ready, finger off the trigger but close, eyes scanning every shadow and side hallway. Charlie was behind me, quiet but alert, his steps precise, controlled. Malik was up front, breathing hard but keeping a steady pace, his satchel bouncing against his hip with each step. Vault C is another 5 levels down, he said, gasping. We'll have to use the auxiliary lift near the old cryo labs, if that's still powered. Isn't that sector sealed? I asked, not slowing. It was. Protocol 9 Sierra was supposed to keep all experimental substances locked under triple containment, but if the infection breached the primary core, then automated lockdown might have failed. That didn't sit right with me. We had firewalls upon firewalls, both digital and physical, to prevent this exact scenario. It shouldn't have spread this far, not this fast. Either someone overrode containment, or something inside the labs wasn't what it was supposed to be. We reached the lift shaft minutes later, though it felt like hours. The overhead panel flickered dimly, showing an emergency power reroute. Malik moved to the manual control unit and began tapping in override codes. I stood guard at the hallway, rifle trained on the corner we'd just come through. It remained silent. too silent. With a hiss and groan of long-neglected hydraulics, the lift door opened. The car inside was small, barely enough room for the three of us and our gear. The walls were reinforced steel, scratched from years of equipment transports. Charlie stepped in, then Malik, then me. The door slammed shut, and the lift began its descent, shuddering with every level it passed. I watched the panel above the door tick down, -1, -2, -3. We're heading into black site range, Malik said. Most of this level isn't on the base schematics. Even internal staff don't know it exists. Why? Charlie asked. Because Vault C isn't just for storage, it's a testing ground. They bring in cadavers for regenerative trials, tissue reanimation, biological resilience. What we were working on was supposed to be inert, completely non-functional outside of specific electrical stimulation. Then, 2 weeks ago, we introduced the wrong compound, a synthetic protein that triggered aggressive neural excitation. It started in test batch 47. Then it spread. Self-replication, adaptation, like it was learning. You said it was airborne, I reminded him. How are we not infected? Malik looked grim. Minimal exposure, contained environments. It needs proximity to activate aggressively. A bloodstream route, scratches, bites, maybe mucosal contact, but it's evolving. That's what scares me. The lift slammed to a stop before I could reply. The lights flickered once, then steadied. The door slid open with a reluctant groan, revealing a hallway that looked even older than the maintenance tunnels we'd just left behind. Dim lights embedded in the floor cast weak beams across layers of dust and grime. Every few meters, reinforced blast doors broke the corridor into sections, their surfaces marked with warning symbols in faded yellow. Bio Level 5 containment, authorized personnel only. We moved quickly. Time was against us. Each footstep echoed like a drumbeat in a tomb. I could feel the weight of the earth pressing down from above. Here, beneath the Groom Lake, the air was too still, the walls too quiet, like the facility itself was holding its breath. The final blast door had been damaged, bent inward, as if something had hit it from the other side with impossible force. Malik hesitated, then approached the manual lever, punching in a second code and cranking the release wheel. The door groaned open, and a rush of cold, sterilized air spilled out, laced with chemical preservatives and something else, something rotten. We stepped inside. Vault C was a long chamber with rows of horizontal containment units embedded into the walls, large glass coffins lit from within, each one labeled with serial numbers and biological tags. Some were empty, some were not. I counted at least 9 bodies in varying stages of decay or treatment. One had its chest cavity wide open, with mechanical probes extending into its ribcage like dissecting fingers. Another twitched faintly, eyelids fluttering though it was clearly sedated. This is where it started, Malik whispered. Batch 47 was in Unit C12. We have to get to the back. There's a secured drawer under the observation panel, emergency suppressants. I engineered them myself. If there's any left, they can slow the spread. Charlie moved to cover us while I followed Malik through the rows. The deeper we went, the more signs of a struggle we saw. Drag marks, overturned carts, splatters of dried fluid on the floor. Something had broken free here, recently. We reached the back panel. Malik knelt, opened the drawer with a biometric scan, and pulled out a silver case roughly the size of a laptop. Inside were 6 glass vials filled with a faintly glowing blue liquid, resting in cushioned foam. He handed one to me and another to Charlie. Inject if you get exposed, into the thigh. It won't stop it, but it'll give you more time to think and act." I nodded, tucking the injector into my vest pouch. As Malik closed the case, lights above us dimmed, then surged back with a harsh buzz, and that's when we heard it. The distant metal-on-metal scrape of claws or nails dragging across steel. "They found us," Charlie said flatly. I moved to the entrance. Through the gap in the door, a shape darted across the corridor. Then another, not walking. Crawling, up walls, across ceilings. Mutated. "Time to go," I said. We turned back toward the lift when the first of them landed just inside the chamber. It wasn't like the others. Taller, leaner, its skin was slick, stretched tight over angular bones. Its jaw unhinged as it hissed, and its eyes reflected the low light, like a predator's. Malik froze. Charlie opened fire, rounds sparking against the metal. The creature moved like lightning, dodging, climbing sideways across the walls, closing in. I drew my sidearm and flanked left. 2 shots clipped its side. It recoiled and dropped, but not before swiping at Malik, catching him across the forearm. Blood sprayed. We didn't have time to argue. I pulled him up, shoved the vial into his hand. "Inject it, now." He obeyed, stabbing the injector into his thigh and groaning through clenched teeth as the suppressant surged into his bloodstream. Charlie covered us, dropping 2 more of the twitching figures that burst through the hallway behind us. We fought our way back to the lift. I slammed the override and punched the controls. The doors took forever to close. Too slow, too loud. Something slammed into the side just as they sealed. We started rising, breathless, Malik shaking but conscious. The steel chamber rocked slightly as we ascended, cables groaning under the strain of the emergency system. I could feel the adrenaline draining from my muscles, leaving behind only the dull weight of exhaustion and the raw throb of bruises along my arms. I wiped blood, someone else's, off the receiver of my rifle and forced myself to stay sharp. Malik was slumped against the wall, the sleeve of his lab coat soaked and clinging to the gash along his forearm. His breathing was uneven, shallow. Whatever scratched him had gone deep. Charlie stood with his back to the doors, reloading in silence, eyes never leaving the seam in the steel. The suppressant had bought Malik time, but we all understood it wouldn't last forever. This wasn't a cure, just a chemical leash keeping the infection at bay. As the elevator passed sublevel 3, the lights flickered again. I glanced at the power gauge on the side panel. We were still climbing, but the energy reserve was dropping faster than it should have. By the time we hit sublevel 2, the car lurched suddenly, a violent jolt that nearly knocked us off our feet. An alarm sounded, a low, muffled klaxon, the kind meant for engineers or techs working in the shafts. I didn't like the sound of it. "Power draws being rerouted," Malik rasped, eyes fluttering as he pressed his uninjured hand to the wall. "Something's tapping the system, or maybe the base AI is failing, starting to cannibalize low-priority functions." The lift stuttered to a stop, just short of sublevel 1. We were maybe 20 feet below the threshold, the emergency lights flickering like candlelight in a breeze. I stared up at the closed ceiling hatch and the dead indicator panel. The cab was locked in place, but the doors weren't opening. "Can we climb out?" Charlie asked, already slinging his rifle across his back and testing the emergency ladder built into the wall. He shook it once, then twice, before grunting. "Still secured." I nodded. "Let's move before the next power surge dumps us back to the bottom." It wasn't easy hoisting Malik up, but we managed. He was pale and weak, but he had enough presence of mind to hold the case of suppressants tight against his chest. Charlie climbed first and helped pull us out onto the shaft ledge. Above, the manual exit hatch to sublevel 1 was sealed. but the maintenance ladder continued up into the dark. We went slow, every muscle burning, every creak of the ladder sounding like a shout in the stillness. Eventually, we reached the emergency bulkhead just beneath the central operations floor. The access panel was open, but the hallway beyond it had gone completely dark. The overheads were dead. No hum of electricity, no automated voice warnings. Just a yawning silence, broken only by our own rasping breaths. We stepped into what used to be the personnel wing. Low ceilings, tight corridors, emergency supply stations at regular intervals. Some of the doors were cracked open, others warped from what looked like internal force. More signs of struggle. A pair of boots abandoned in the middle of the floor. A scorched security helmet, the faceplate shattered. One of the internal windows to a break room was shattered inward, the interior splashed with streaks of dried blood and overturned chairs. The vending machine had been ripped open, not pried. Ripped. "Where is everyone?" Charlie asked, almost to himself. They either evacuated, hid, or Malik didn't finish the sentence. I spotted a security terminal embedded in the wall just past the infirmary junction. The screen was cracked, but its lower quadrant still flickered with the dull green code. I wiped dust from the interface and powered it up manually. The system hesitated, then sputtered to life in partial offline mode. 14 personnel, unaccounted for, no working comms. Lockdown still engaged. Whoever had been in command was either dead or had failed to transmit the all-clear. I checked the last recorded log. It was time-stamped just under 6 hours ago. The cursor blinked. That was it. I stepped away and motioned for the others to follow. We needed to reach command, the main hub that managed internal security, satellites, and base-wide systems. It was 2 levels up, through the comms relay sector and central data bay. That route, if it was still intact, would give us the best chance at broadcasting outside. The central corridor felt tighter than I remembered. As we moved through the shadowed halls, I kept expecting something to leap out, but the silence stayed unbroken. Occasionally, we heard the soft tap of something moving behind walls or ductwork, too light to be a person, too deliberate to be rats. We avoided the worst of the mess in the operations wing by cutting through the diagnostic lab, stepping over broken screens and a motionless body half hidden under a desk. The man had a red badge, command-level access. His chest had been caved in like someone had hit it with a sledgehammer. One hand was still clutching a tablet, its screen cracked but active. I knelt, pried it loose, and read the notes scrawled there in a trembling font. Unit 47. Be adapted to light deprivation. Infrared sensitivity confirmed. Movement is now erratic but strategic. Avoid reflective surfaces. Avoid proximity. Do not assume loss of consciousness indicates safety. No longer strictly necrotic. Something is inhabiting the bodies. I didn't like the sound of that last line. We made it to the comms relay access and found the doors open, but the interior gutted. The console banks were melted, like they'd been hit with thermite or something equally destructive. Black streaks lined the walls where heat had fused plastic and wire. Nothing was usable. Malik stood at the edge, looking in without speaking. We didn't waste time. Command was our only remaining option. Up another level. Manual stairs this time, since the main lift systems were shot. We pushed through the reinforced hatch into command proper. It was a circular chamber, roughly 20 meters across, filled with monitoring stations, overhead projectors, and a reinforced operations platform at the center. This room had been the brain of Groom Lake, a place where orders were dispatched, data assessed, and silence enforced. Now, it looked like a tomb. Half the room had been torn apart. 3 of the monitors were shattered, the others blinking static. A single body lay crumpled over the console, dressed in the black fatigues of a commander. His throat was gone, torn open to the bone. Flies buzzed over the ruined console. Charlie moved forward and gently pushed the body aside. He wiped the controls and tapped the console's surface. Miraculously, the central terminal responded. "No outgoing signal," he said. "The array is fried, but I might be able to bounce a localized message across the experimental towers on range 13. "You think anyone's still out there listening?" I asked, loading a fresh mag into my rifle. "Doesn't matter. If we don't try, no one will ever know what was buried here." He set to work. Malik sat slumped by the wall, clutching the suppressants. His eyes had gone glassy, sweat beading on his forehead. I knelt next to him and checked his pulse. It was too fast, irregular. "It's not going to hold much longer," he whispered. "Whatever's inside me. It's stronger than I thought." "We'll get you out," I lied, because I didn't have anything else to offer him. Not truth, not hope. Just a lie he needed to hear. A sudden tremor rolled through the floor. A low, distant grinding. I snapped to my feet, raising my rifle. Charlie looked up from the terminal, his fingers hovering over the controls like he'd just touched something scalding. "That wasn't seismic," he muttered, scanning the readouts. "Something just came online, deep-tier systems, buried beyond mapped sublevels." I turned toward Malik, but he was slumped now, head lolling forward as if the tremor had drained what little fight remained. He blinked slowly, sweat trickling down his jawline, his mouth moving without sound. His pulse was still there, but faint, erratic. I didn't need a biosensor to know he was slipping. The suppressant was losing its grip. "What the hell's under sublevel C?" I asked, stepping beside Charlie as he tapped into the dormant security schematics. He bypassed standard UI protocols and dropped into the hard-coded functions, punching through layers of obsolete firewall code until a crude wireframe rendering of the base unfolded. The usual architecture, labs, barracks, data cores, occupied the upper floors, but below them, buried beneath several meters of reinforced earth and classified as power routing waste management, was something else entirely. A massive chamber, circular, geothermally insulated, connected to a forgotten freight rail and lined with isolation barriers that were 20 years out of date. It wasn't mapped in official schematics, no surveillance nodes, no audio input, but its designation blinked in the corner of the screen in faint yellow code. Deep Protocol, Obsidian, Core, Active. Charlie leaned back and exhaled through his teeth. "I think we just woke up the thing they built this place to contain." I stared at the wireframe chamber, my gut turning cold. Why would they power it now? He didn't answer. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe the answer was as simple as it was horrifying, because the base was compromised, containment had failed, and whatever that lower chamber held was a fallback so extreme it had to be buried under lies. Groom Lake wasn't a research station. It was a lockbox, and now someone, or something, had turned the key. Another tremor rolled through the floor, this one sharper, more focused. From below us, something surged, power, pressure, the unmistakable vibration of turbines winding up. Charlie pointed to the corner of the schematic where a hard junction connected the core to the satellite uplink tower outside the base. His voice was tight. "They're trying to transmit." "You said the uplink was fried." It was, but the obsidian core has its own feed, hardened fiber, shielded against EMPs. It's old, Cold War tech, but it was built to punch a signal through orbital clutter, with or without permission. "You think the infection's controlling it?" "I think," Charlie said slowly, "it's not just an infection. I think it's a pattern, something self-replicating that hijacks biological and mechanical systems alike. and it just found a broadcast antenna. The implications landed with a sickening weight. If it could encode itself into signal, it wouldn't need vectors like blood or claw. It could spread across bandwidths, satellites, anything connected to the grid. Malik stirred behind us and tried to speak, but what came out was a guttural rasp, a noise like a clogged drain. I turned, gun already half raised, but he lifted his hand slowly in a weak gesture of surrender. "I can still think," he croaked, "but it's inside now. Every time I blink, I see things. Structures. Not human." "Can you stand?" I asked. "Oh." He nodded once, shakily, and we helped him to his feet. He held the briefcase of suppressants close like it was the only thing anchoring him. I looked at Charlie. "Can you shut it down?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Not from here. The only hard access node is in the chamber itself, the core. There's an interrupt switch, manual failsafe, probably locked behind biometric authorization, meant for final tier personnel only. Then we go." He looked at me like I was crazy. "You want to go down there? If we don't, this spreads. We'll be lucky if it only eats the southwest. If it piggybacks off the satellite array, it'll infect everything from satellites to cell towers. The next person to stream a signal gets rewritten." Charlie stared at the screen for a long moment, then nodded once. "Freight access is through the old substation hatch behind the mechanical bay. Long climb, no cameras, no lights." "Perfect," I muttered. "Let's gear up." We pulled what we could from Command's emergency cache. One full satchel of demolition charges, a functional flamethrower unit with 2 backup canisters, a signal jammer, and a filtered comlink that might have once been military issue but had seen better days. Malik took nothing. He couldn't be trusted with a weapon now, but he moved with us anyway, walking like someone half-possessed by a dream. We reached the access hatch an hour later, after carefully descending a crumbling access shaft and passing through hallways so quiet they might have been carved from bone. The substation hatch was ancient. Manual rotary lock, reinforced steel, buried beneath decades of paint and welding scars. Charlie worked it open with effort, his hands blistered and shaking. Beyond it lay a freight elevator the size of a train car, hanging open and dead. We climbed down the maintenance rungs beside it, descending into a shaft so deep the light stopped following us after 20 meters. We used hand crank lights. Every motion echoed. At the base, the air changed. Heavier, denser. It had a smell, ozone and rot, layered like something had been fermenting in ancient servers for years. The tunnel beyond curved into the heart of the core, its walls lined with fiber optic cables and strange black conduits that pulsed faintly like veins. "This was never meant to be seen by anyone," Charlie whispered. I raised my weapon. "Then let's make sure no one else does." The obsidian core wasn't a lab. It was a containment vault. A single massive chamber, spherical, lined in concentric rings of graphite shielding and what looked like printed circuits the size of parking spaces. In the center, suspended by maglev turbines, was a glowing obelisk, organic and synthetic, wrapped in metal coils and chiseled with alien geometries. It wasn't built here, it had been brought here. We approached cautiously. The closer we got, the more interference crackled across our radios. Malik winced, dropping to one knee, clutching his skull. "It's talking," he gasped. "It's not language, it's instruction, it's trying to overwrite." "Charlie," I called, "where's the kill switch?" He sprinted to the side of the chamber, scanning for the access panel. Lights pulsed faster now, red and amber running like blood down the walls. A voice, not a human one, began to hum from the structure, deep and low frequency, like it was vibrating through our spines. "I see it," Charlie yelled, prying open a panel. But it needs biometric confirmation. Base commander level. I can spoof part of it, but I need a thermal key. I turned toward the corpse back in command. Useless now. I looked at Malik. He met my eyes. Sweat pouring down his face, jaw clenched. Do it. You won't survive the surge. I'm already gone, he rasped, then thrust the briefcase toward me. One last dose, just to keep it contained long enough. I grabbed it, punched in the override, and injected the full dose into his carotid. He spasmed, howled once, then surged forward with Charlie. They worked in silence, Charlie guiding Malik's trembling hand to the sensor. The system paused, then accepted. A siren sounded, real this time. Not a hallucination. The core's lights dimmed and the hum stuttered. Now! Charlie shouted. Hit the override. I slammed the charge detonator into the main coil conduit, primed all 10 satchel charges, and activated the timer. We had 30 seconds. We ran. No speeches, no slow-motion last stands. Just 3 people sprinting down a corridor that felt like the throat of some colossal machine. Heat and sound building behind us as the countdown ticked. The explosion didn't come all at once. First came the pressure wave. A gust that blew us off our feet, then the sound. A bone-rattling roar that filled every crevice of the earth. Then, finally, the silence. When I woke, we were on the freight platform. The shaft above us filled with dust and sparks. Charlie was breathing, unconscious. Malik was gone. Nothing remained of him but a briefcase, scorched and broken, lying beside a smear of ash. We limped out of Groom Lake hours later, dragging what gear we could. Above us, the sky was just beginning to lighten. No fire, no signals, no monsters. But I knew better. Something had spoken through that core. It had reached for us, tested us, and while we had stopped it here, I didn't believe for a second that it had only ever existed in that vault. There are other bases, other vaults, other languages etched in metal and blood, waiting to be translated. And someone, somewhere, is still listening. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.